What if I told you that the very moment you stop chasing love is the moment an avoidant finally begins to feel it? When we talk about avoidant people, we're talking about individuals who have learned, whether they realize it or not, that closeness feels unsafe. They've built their whole way of relating to others on the belief that intimacy equals danger and vulnerability equals risk. At first glance, they can seem like they don't care or that they're cold and emotionally distant. But that isn't the full picture. Beneath the surface is often a strong fear of being consumed, of losing control, of having their freedom taken away. This is why the very thing most of us crave, love, attention, and emotional closeness, can feel suffocating for them. Here's the paradox. The more love you try to pour into an avoidant, the less motivated they feel to respond. Not because they don't want love, but because their inner wiring tells them it isn't safe. If you've ever been in a relationship with someone avoidant, you've probably noticed this play out. You send them a thoughtful message, expecting warmth in return, and instead you get silence or a short, unclear reply. You try to spend more time together, and suddenly they need space. It feels as if the more you give, the more they retreat. This isn't personal, though it often feels like it is. It's actually a protective reflex, a defense pattern that usually began very early. Psychologists call this avoidant attachment, and it often starts when a child realizes that their emotional needs will not always be met. The child learns that reaching for closeness leads to rejection, disappointment, or feeling smothered. So instead of relying on others, they build a wall. And over the years, that wall becomes part of who they believe they are. They tell themselves they don't need anyone, that independence equals safety, and that distance gives them control. But here's the truth. No matter how avoidant a person is, they can't erase their basic human need for connection. Every human being is wired for it. Loneliness, whether they admit it or bury it, gnaws at everyone. The avoidant may push it down so deep that even they can't see it anymore, but it doesn't disappear. This is why pouring endless love and reassurance onto them backfires. You're speaking a language they've trained themselves not to hear. Think of it like this. If someone is starving and you force-feed them, their body rejects it. But if you let hunger grow, the appetite returns naturally. For the avoidant, love has to be something they feel drawn to, not something forced on them. And the only way for that desire to awaken is to step back, to stop fueling the very defense that makes them run. The difficulty here is that if you're on the other side, your natural instinct is to do the opposite. You feel them slipping away, so you chase. You feel their silence, so you try to fill it with even more affection, more reassurance, more effort. You think that if you just love them harder, they'll finally relax into the relationship. But to the avoidant, all of this feels like pressure. No matter how genuine your love is, it starts to feel heavy. You can't talk someone out of avoidance. You can't argue them into closeness. You can't love them so intensely that their fear disappears. The only thing that works is respecting the way their psychology functions. That means realizing that your love will only hold value when it isn't guaranteed. Think about it. When water constantly flows from a tap, it's taken for granted. But the moment it stops, you suddenly realize its importance. Avoidant people are no different. When your affection is endlessly available, they convince themselves they don't need it. But when you stop chasing, when you stop filling every silence, when you stop softening every edge, they're confronted with the truth they've avoided all along. They actually do need love, they do need closeness, and they do need you. The lack of it forces them to face that reality. So understanding the avoidant mindset is key. It's not about judging them, and it's not about blaming yourself. It's about recognizing the pattern for what it is, a cycle of pursuit and withdrawal. Your role is not to chase harder, but to step out of that cycle. Their avoidance isn't a reflection of your worth, it's a reflection of their fear, And fear cannot be undone with pressure. It dissolves when space is created. By pulling back your love, you create the conditions for their desire to return. That's the paradox you have to accept. The less you give, the more they notice. The less you chase, the more they wonder. The less you soften their fear, the more they are left to wrestle with it themselves. When your love is no longer automatic, it transforms from something overwhelming into something precious. If you remember nothing else, remember this. Avoidance thrives in abundance but withers in scarcity. Give endlessly and they withdraw. Pull back and they move closer. This isn't about punishing them. It's about allowing reality to show them what their fear has hidden, that they do need connection, and without it, something vital is missing. When we talk about starving the avoidant of your love, what we really mean is the choice to hold back your attention. And that can be very hard because everything in us is wired to seek closeness. When someone we care about starts to drift away, our natural response is to reach out and try to bridge the gap. That isn't weakness. That's simply human nature. But with an avoidant, following that instinct almost always works against you. Attention is the lifeblood of any relationship. It's the currency we give that says, "You matter, I see you, I choose you." But with someone avoidant, the more you give freely, the less value it carries. They don't respect it, they don't crave it. In fact, it can overwhelm them. Constant attention feels like being watched, and for someone who associates closeness with a loss of freedom, that's unbearable. So what happens when you step back and stop providing that endless stream of reassurance and love? Something important. You disrupt their cycle. You interrupt the pattern they expect. Avoidant people assume you'll pursue them. They expect you to close the gap they create. That's the role they unconsciously assign you. You chase, they retreat. That's the dance. But when you stop, when you no longer provide the attention they thought was guaranteed, you rewrite the script. Suddenly they are left with silence, with space, with absence. And over time, absence becomes awareness. Think about it this way. If someone is used to you calling them every morning and suddenly you don't, they notice. If they're used to you filling every silence with words and then you stay quiet, the stillness becomes loud. That quiet forces them to feel what they've been running from, your value. Withholding attention isn't about manipulation or punishment. It's about balance. It's about claiming your power and showing to yourself and to them that your presence is not automatic. Psychologically, this works because humans notice what disappears. We adapt quickly to what is always there, but when something we've relied on suddenly goes missing, it creates tension. And the avoidant feels that tension, even if they never say it out loud. The absence of your attention becomes a mirror. It shows them the space you once filled. For the first time, they can't take it for granted. There's a deeper truth here, too. Love, like anything precious, only holds meaning when it isn't endless. If gold was scattered on every street, no one would treasure it. If every canvas was a masterpiece, none of them would matter. Scarcity creates value. The same is true for your attention. When you give it without limit, it loses its weight. When you step back, it sharpens. It becomes stronger and much more desired. And this isn't about games. It's not about seeing how long it takes them to break. It's about boundaries. It's about knowing your worth and refusing to pour yourself endlessly into a void. By holding back attention, you're setting a boundary that says, "My love is not endless proof. If you want it, you'll have to meet me halfway." That changes everything. Not only how they see you, but how you see yourself. You stop being the one begging to be chosen, and you start being the one who knows they are worth choosing. Of course, this takes patience. When you withhold attention, the avoidant may not respond right away. They might even double down on their distance at first because it's their default response. But with time, the silence works on them. The absence gnaws at them. And that realization is far more powerful than anything you could have said to convince them. It makes you face your own fear of letting go. It pushes you to ask yourself, why am I chasing someone who doesn't want to be caught? Why am I giving without receiving anything back? It slowly builds your strength, your independence, and your sense of self. And when you begin to stand in that place of confidence, you become far more attractive, not only to the avoidant, but to anyone who crosses your path. Because there is nothing more magnetic than a person who doesn't need to be needed. That's the paradox again. By pulling back your attention, you actually become more visible. By stepping away, you end up standing out more. By withholding your love from the avoidant, you stir inside them the very thing they've spent years trying to bury, the need to connect. And if there's only one thing you remember, let it be this: your attention is power. Don't hand it out without thought. Don't pour it endlessly into someone who cannot hold it. Give it where it matters, where it is valued, where it's returned, where it nourishes something real. Because when you stop pouring yourself into someone who runs away from it, you don't just give them a chance to realize what they are missing, you give yourself the chance to understand what you really deserve. And that discovery, for both of you, changes everything. One of the most difficult truths you eventually come to see in relationships with avoidant people is that you often end up chasing someone who has no intention of letting you catch them. And I don't say that to be harsh or unkind. It's simply how the pattern develops. You move closer, they move away. You reach out, they withdraw. Before long, you're in a race you never chose to enter, tiring yourself out while they keep moving the finish line farther and farther. The sad irony is that this back and forth isn't really about love at all. It's about control. Every relationship has a subtle balance of power, not in a cruel or manipulative sense, but in the quiet question of who values who more in that moment. When you're the one constantly chasing, what you're really communicating, whether you realize it or not, is, I need you more than you need me. That unevenness takes away the natural pull of love. It makes your care too easy to dismiss, too simple to overlook. What most people forget is that humans are wired to value what they must put effort into. We treasure what we've worked for, what we've earned, what we've had to chase ourselves. When you turn that balance around, when you stop being the one who always runs toward the avoidant, you place them in an unfamiliar position. You make them sit in the discomfort of being the one who might have to pursue. And that discomfort is where change can finally begin. The chase pattern is deeply tied to psychology. Avoidants by nature create distance to feel safe. That's their shield. They step back so they don't have to face the raw feelings that come with closeness. And often, their partners unknowingly feed this cycle by running forward to fill the empty space. You close the gap, you take on the emotional work, and by doing so, you keep confirming their belief that they don't need to step forward themselves. Why would they? They already get your love, your energy, your presence without having to risk anything. But now imagine what happens when you stop. Imagine what unfolds when you step back instead of moving in closer. All of a sudden, the avoidant faces a choice they're not used to making. Do they let you drift away, or do they finally step toward you? That's the shift. That's when the chase begins to turn. And there's a deeper truth behind all this. Every relationship dynamic in life finds a balance sooner or later. If you lean too much into giving, the other person naturally leans into taking. If you lean too much into pursuit, the other leans into running. By stepping back, by refusing to play a game you can't win, you allow the balance to return. And by doing so, you completely change the rules. Now, this doesn't mean playing games or pretending you don't care. It's not about faking distance or acting cold. It's about genuinely deciding not to pour yourself into someone who won't meet you halfway. It's about living the truth that your love is not endless or free without effort. If they want it, they must show up for it. That small shift, from proving your worth to standing in your worth, is everything. The power of reversing the chase is that it creates the space for genuine desire to appear. When you stop running toward them, the avoidant no longer has the luxury of hiding behind their walls. If they want you, they will feel it. If they miss you, they'll act on it. And if they don't, at least you've stopped wasting yourself on a one-sided effort. Either way, you win, because you've taken back your power. And here's something crucial to remember. People don't change because you beg them to. They don't transform because you cry, argue, or explain your value. Real change comes only when their own experience forces them to face a new reality. By stepping away from the chase, you create that reality. You give them the one thing they cannot ignore: silence. And silence, when it arrives, is louder than any speech, any explanation, any declaration of love. But there's another side to this too. Reversing the chase isn't just about the avoidant. It's also about you. It's about breaking the cycle of overgiving, of overproving, of exhausting yourself to be chosen. It's about being still long enough to ask, why am I chasing someone who runs from me? What does it say about me that I accept so little in return? That's where the real transformation happens, because once you've broken that habit, you won't just shift the pattern with them. You'll shift it with everyone you ever connect with. And maybe that's the greatest lesson of all. By reversing the chase, you stop teaching people that your love is cheap or endless. You begin teaching them that your love is rare, that it requires effort, that it is worth pursuing. That's not just powerful, it's freeing. So if you want to change the way things are with an avoidant, stop chasing them. Stand still. Let silence speak on your behalf. Let distance say what words cannot, because the moment you stop running after them is the moment they must decide. Will they step forward or will they let you go? And either way, you finally see the truth. And the truth, even if it hurts, is always better than running in endless circles. At the heart of everything, understanding avoidance, withholding attention, changing the chase, there is one principle that holds it together: self-respect. Without it, none of this works. Without it, you'll fall back into chasing, overgiving, proving yourself to someone who doesn't truly see your worth. Self-respect is the anchor. It's what keeps you grounded when your feelings tempt you to go after them again. And here's the reality. Most people don't lose themselves in love because they care too much. They lose themselves because they forget their own value. They start to believe love means endless sacrifice, endless proving, endless availability. They confuse loyalty with desperation. And desperation has never been attractive. Not to an avoidant, not to anyone. What draws people in is someone who knows their worth, someone who lives by the quiet truth: my love is a gift, not a guarantee. Self-respect isn't arrogance. It's not walking around demanding everyone bow to you. It's quieter, steadier, stronger. It's the inner certainty that you don't need to beg for what you deserve. It's the strength to walk away from anyone who treats your love as optional. And yes, that strength is painfully hard. Because when you love someone, part of you always wants to bend, to explain, to excuse their behavior. You tell yourself stories like, they just need time, or they're not used to someone like me, or if I give more, maybe they'll finally give back. But the truth is, the more you bend, the more you break, especially with an avoidant. Their entire coping pattern is built on testing how far they can pull away and still have you follow. And if you keep following, you're teaching them you don't respect yourself enough to set limits. You're showing them that no matter how far they retreat, you'll always be there waiting, forgiving and giving. And that isn't love. That is self-abandonment. Self-respect turns the story around. It says, I can care for you deeply, but I will never leave myself behind in the process. That's the line that cannot be crossed. That's the instant you stop making their avoidance your responsibility and start making your dignity your highest value. And that is where real strength begins. Think of it this way. When you truly respect yourself, your love becomes rare. Not because you are holding it back to play tricks, but because you refuse to waste it where it isn't valued. That sense of scarcity, that boundary, makes your presence meaningful. It's the same principle we spoke about with not giving constant attention, but this goes deeper, because now it's no longer a strategy. It's who you are. It's built into your identity, into your belief in your own worth. And let me make something clear, people feel it when you respect yourself. You don't have to tell anyone. You don't need to say, "I am valuable, treat me well." It shows in how you carry yourself, in how you respond to being ignored, in how you refuse to chase after someone. It appears in the silence you hold when you are disrespected. It shows in your choice to walk away rather than shrink to fit into someone else's limits. What is powerful is that self-respect doesn't only shift how they view you, it changes how you see yourself. The moment you decide, "I will not abandon myself for love," you free yourself from the endless cycle of proving. You suddenly realize you do not need to fight for anyone's attention because your very presence is already enough. And that truth is magnetic. It draws people near because quiet confidence is irresistible. But here's the deeper truth in psychology. Self-respect is exactly what the avoidant secretly longs for. They may avoid closeness, but they don't actually want someone who accepts being neglected. Deep down, they want to be challenged. They want to feel they must earn what they are given. Your self-respect makes them see you as someone worth chasing, someone not to be taken lightly. It makes them either rise to the level of your worth or lose you entirely. Either way, you win, because you refuse to lose yourself. I know this path isn't easy. I know there's a part of you that wants to keep giving, forgiving, and trying. But ask yourself, at what price? If loving someone means betraying yourself, is that really love? Or is it fear? Fear of being left alone, fear of not being good enough, fear of letting go. Self-respect requires that you face that fear and still choose yourself. Because here's the ultimate reality. You teach people how to treat you. Every time you accept being neglected, you show them it is allowed. Every time you overgive, you teach them to undergive. Every time you chase, you show them they can run. But when you respect yourself, when you stop playing those roles, you teach something else. You teach that your love has value, and if they want it, they must meet it with effort. And even if they don't, even if the avoidant never comes closer, your self-respect protects you. It saves you from wasting years on someone who cannot love you the way you deserve. It prevents you from turning into a shadow of yourself in the name of holding on. Self-respect is not just a plan, it is survival. It's how you keep your soul whole while moving through the complicated world of human love. So, if you remember one thing, let it be this. Never exchange your dignity for someone's attention. Never abandon yourself in the name of love, because once you do, you stop being a partner and turn into a prisoner. And love, true love, was never meant to feel like a prison. Until now, we've been focusing on strategy, on seeing the avoidance way of thinking, holding back attention, reversing the chase, and building on self-respect. But strategy by itself is not enough. What truly changes the dynamic is when the avoidant is forced into an emotional awakening, when they feel deep inside that losing you is not only possible, but painful. And the only way that happens is through absence. Avoidants don't respond to words the way you might wish. You can tell them many times that you care, that they matter to you, that you want things to work, but their defenses are too strong. They've built walls over a lifetime to block exactly those words. Words slide off them because to them, closeness equals danger. But feelings, those they cannot escape. When your presence is no longer a given, when your attention is no longer free, they feel the emptiness. They feel the space where you used to be. That is when the realization lands. You must understand this truth. People rarely change from being told what to value. They change when life forces them to face what they can no longer ignore. An avoidant will not wake up because you begged or argued. They wake up because for the first time, losing you is not an idea, it's reality. Think about it. We all take things for granted when they are constant. The air we breathe, the water from the tap, the relationships we think will never shift. But when one of those things suddenly disappears, we feel the absence in every part of us. That is what pulling back your love does. It creates absence, and absence becomes awareness. Here's the paradox. The avoidant has spent life avoiding the need for others. But when you stop offering the very closeness they ran from, they feel the hunger they've been denying. And that hunger is powerful because it doesn't come from you persuading them. It comes from inside them. That is the difference. When you step back, they can no longer hide behind their usual distance. They are left with their own emotions, emotions they've been fighting to bury, and those emotions whisper the truth. I miss them. I need them. I do not want to lose them. Let's be clear. This is not about playing tricks. You are not withholding love to punish them. You are simply walking away from a pattern where you are giving too much and receiving too little. And by doing this, you allow them to experience life without the safety of your constant presence. That is what leads to their awakening. On a bigger level, this points to something universal. All growth comes from tension. Muscles grow by strain. Wisdom grows through pain. Relationships grow through facing the threat of loss. The avoidant is no different. They need the pressure of absence, the unease of silence, the ache of missing you to break through their walls. That's how they finally start to feel what you've been trying to show them all along. That love matters. That connection matters. That you matter. And here's the beauty. Once the avoidant feels that truth, it is stronger than anything you could have forced, because it belongs to them. It did not come from your begging. It came from their own feelings. And people respect what they discover themselves far more than what they are told. But here's where you must stay strong. That awakening doesn't come right away. It might take weeks, even months of distance before they feel it. And you must resist the temptation to break the silence too soon. Every time you rush in, you take away the chance for them to sit with their discomfort. You soothe them before the lesson has settled, and without discomfort, growth never comes. This is also where your self-respect returns, because while they are realizing their truth, you are realizing yours too. You are seeing that your worth is not tied to their approval. You are learning that love is not proven by how much you can endure, but by how much you demand for yourself. And if they never have their realization, if they don't step closer, you've still learned what you needed. That your love deserves balance, not resistance. So yes, stepping away from the avoidant may spark their desire, but more importantly, it awakens you. It reminds you that your presence has weight, that your absence has meaning, and that you don't need to beg to be valued. You only need to allow the truth to show itself. And truth always shows itself when love is no longer taken for granted. So, keep this in mind. The awakening cannot be forced with words. It only happens through experience. And the most powerful experience is absence. When they feel the emptiness you leave, they finally feel the truth they have been avoiding. And whether they choose to rise to it or not, you know one thing for sure. You never had to chase love. Because real love does not run from you. It comes toward you. By now, you see the pattern. You understand how the avoidant thinks. You see the strength of holding back attention. You've learned how to reverse the chase. You know self-respect is the anchor. You've seen how absence sparks awakening. And all of this brings us to the final piece, shifting the balance of power. Because in the end, this isn't only about your relationship with the avoidant. It's about taking back your choice, your freedom, your strength. Power in relationships is not control. It is not domination. It is influence, presence, and value. The truth is, if you've been caught in the avoidance cycle, you've been giving away your power without realizing. Each time you chased, over-explained, stayed when you knew you should step away, you gave them the advantage. Not because they were stronger, but because you abandoned your strength. The moment you decide to stop feeding that cycle, the instant you pull back, respect yourself, and step out of the chase, the power shifts. Suddenly, they no longer feel certain you'll always be there. Suddenly, your love is no longer unlimited. It becomes earned. That is the shift. And it changes how they see you and how you see yourself. When you stand in that kind of strength, you stop begging for scraps of attention. You stop waiting anxiously for a text or searching for meaning in half-hearted words. You become steady. You become grounded. And that steadiness forces them to respond differently. They can no longer take you for granted. They must decide, step forward or step away. Either way, you are no longer powerless. This is where the truth about scarcity returns. When something is endless, it is ignored. When it is scarce, it is valued. Your love, when built on self-respect, becomes rare, not because you are manipulating, but because you refuse to give it where it is disrespected. That is when the avoidant sees the truth. Your love carries weight, and that weight demands respect. Now, let's step back. Power in relationships always belongs to the one who needs the other less. That does not mean you stop caring or pretend you don't want closeness. But it does mean you must stop making your worth depend on their validation. The less you need their approval, the more natural strength you hold. The less you beg to be chosen, the more attractive you become. Because nothing is more magnetic than a person who knows they are enough, with or without another. That's why this matters so deeply. It's not about punishing the avoidant. It's not about forcing them to chase. It's about balance. It's about leaving the cycle where you gave all and received little. It's about taking your place and saying, if you want to stay here, you must meet me halfway. That is strength. That is dignity. That is love with self-respect. And let's be honest, when you shift the balance, one of two outcomes will happen. Either the avoidant feels the discomfort, realizes your worth, and steps up in new ways, or they won't. And as hard as that is, it is still a gift, because it saves you from wasting your years waiting for someone who will never meet you where you stand. Either way, you win, because you are no longer powerless. You've reclaimed choice. That's the deeper truth. Shifting the balance of power is not only about making the avoidant want you. It's about remembering you already had a choice. You are not powerless. The moment you stop giving your love away freely, you return to your strength. And from there, everything changes. So what does this look like in daily life? It looks like pausing before sending that text and asking, am I chasing or am I standing in my worth? It looks like noticing when their silence makes you anxious, and instead of filling it, you hold it. It looks like walking away from things that reduce you, even when it hurts, because you know your dignity is worth more than temporary attention. That is the practice. That is how the balance shifts. And here's the final thing to hold on to. Power is not something they stole. It's something you gave away. And just as you gave it, you can take it back. By seeing the avoidant clearly, by leaving the chase, by building on self-respect, by letting absence do its work, you reclaim it. You remind both yourself and them that your love is not a burden. It is a privilege. And when you stand in that truth, everything changes, not because you forced it, but because you finally remembered who you are. So don't hold back your love from the avoidant just to make them want you. Hold it back to remind yourself that you were never powerless at all.